Alrighty, so today we're going to look at Roman mosaics and painting. It's not hard to understand, and it's not hard to tell the differences between them. For the most part, just like in architecture and just like in sculpture, the Romans rip off the Greeks. So a lot of the style that we see in mosaics and painting, they lift from the Greeks. They copy themes and even copy paintings from the Greeks and translate them into either new paintings or mosaics. The vast majority of the mosaics have Greek themes and styles, but there's so few Greek examples that have survived that we don't know which is Greek and which is Roman, but we can find some parallels as we go along. So today we're going to look at Roman mosaics and how they were derived from Greece, and then we will look at some painted Roman portraiture, and then we will check out the Egyptian mummy portraits of Fayum, which are pretty interesting, and then we'll see the 4 different styles of Roman wall painting. Now, the vast majority of all examples of Roman wall painting come from these 2 cities, Herculaneum and Pompeii. We've already talked a little about Pompeii. Herculaneum, not as fruitful with the artifacts as Pompeii was, but still provides a good bit of information. Why here? It's because of the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. There was a Roman historian by the name of Pliny the Elder, and he was in a boat right here in the Bay of Naples, and he sailed right past Vesuvius as it was erupting and documented all of it. So we have a first-hand account of what that was like, and then he interviewed a few people who actually made it out of Pompeii and Herculaneum. Not many did. From the time it erupted until the time everyone was dead, about 15 minutes. That's how long it took. As soon as the initial eruption took place, this blast of heat goes out and vaporizes the people that are most or closest to Vesuvius, and then that is followed by big clouds of noxious gas. So a lot of the people, they didn't have time to get out, and then even if they did get out, they didn't have anywhere to go. So a lot of the original inhabitants of these cities are still preserved there, and I'll show you some of their bodies. So when it erupted, it launched this giant cloud of ash into the air, and it landed and covered both of these cities in somewhere between 13 and 20 feet of volcanic ash in just a matter of minutes. So that's why all of this is so well preserved. They've even found food, jewelry, skeletons, some clothing has survived underneath all of that ash. So it's almost like Pompeii and Herculaneum were both frozen in time at the very moment of the eruption. It was first discovered or rediscovered rather in 1592, but wasn't excavated until the mid 18th century, and they're still excavating it today. I just read an article where they found this pretty sweet new wall mural, a little still life of some food objects like a couple of months ago. So it's ongoing. You can visit, you can walk around. Again, I think I encouraged you to take this day trip. It's not far from Rome, but worthwhile. You'll find a lot of these bodies that look like fossilized bodies, but that's not really what they are. What you see that are shaped like human bodies, those are cavities. So what happened was when the person died, then they would be covered by the ash, and then the body would rot away, leaving a hole where the flesh was, and then our archaeologists come and they drill a hole down to the cavity that contains the skeleton. They fill it up with plaster and then brush all the ash away, and then that's what you're left with. So each one of these little bodies you see has a skeleton inside it. They're all actual people, and you get it all. Men, women, children, dogs, and their cats, and they're doing all kinds of things that they would have been doing in life. Most of them lying down and smothering to death, so it's not really all that glamorous. And then there are other people who are trying to get away and running and struggling. I can't imagine the feelings they must have had knowing that there was nothing they could do about it. This had been going on for centuries, millennia. This volcano erupts, and so they knew it was coming. They just didn't know when, and so it took them all quite by surprise. The last time it erupted was in 1944, and it will erupt again. It erupts not on any type of schedule, but the longer the time in between eruptions, the worse it is when it finally does erupt. So we're working on 80 years or so since it has erupted. 80 years. So it's not going to be cool whenever it does happen. It can't be predicted. Most scientists say within the next couple of 100 years it will erupt again, and it's going to be pretty awful. There's a view of Mount Vesuvius there in the background with the remains of Pompeii there in the foreground. So you can kind of get a sense. It's a pretty big city. A lot going on, a lot preserved. So now let's go down and walk the streets and see what we can find. The first thing we're going to examine are preserved mosaics, and we've seen a few of those. Particularly some of the nicer examples from Hadrian's Villa. Just like with Greek artwork, Roman mosaics will frequently depict scenes from mythology, religion, portraits. We see still lives, theatrical scenes. They record their mythology. There are geometric labyrinth patterns, and then other designs that are strictly decorative. The whole point of mosaics, not everyone had them, but if you did, that meant that you were someone of means. So they were a status symbol and a testament to your wealth and status in society. This is a fairly standard sort of floor mosaic that you will run across in ancient Rome, just decorating the floor. I mean, you're so great that you can just walk on top of this. That's how awesome you are. And then your guests can come over and just walk over all of this fine craftsmanship. You can see all of the little tessera, all these little squares. These are little cubes of stone or ceramic or glass that are then inset into wet concrete, wet cement. They would cement over the area that they were going to fill in the designs, and then sort of sketch the design ahead of time into the wet cement. You don't have a long time to work before that sets, so the drawings are pretty quick. And then piece by piece and bit by bit, you inset all of these like a Lite-Brite. I don't know if you remember the Lite-Brite thing where you could put those little pegs in and make pictures. And this is the same thing. Pixelated images is another way to kind of think about how they're put together. And it's pretty amazing the range of chiaroscuro and shading and highlights and shadows that they're able to get out of squares and rocks. So keep that in mind as we go through and look at all of these things. Here's another floor. This one shows an Egyptizing scene in the center. Those are figures from ancient Egypt. The Romans love Egypt, and so you'll occasionally find little Egyptian motifs done for decorative reasons, as we see here. And then we also have these really intricate labyrinthine patterns that meander in and out. and then these little decorative motifs here that we see in Roman sculpture. So all of it is kind of an amalgam. The Romans feel free to borrow from other cultures. They feel free to elaborate on their own stuff. Nothing is static with Roman painting until about the 4th century or so, and then it just doesn't develop anymore, and that was due to the Christianization of Rome. The whole point of making artwork shifts from decorating things and glorifying the owners to telling the story of the Bible and Christian stories, and so developmentally it kind of falters there for a bit in the 4th and 5th centuries. Here's one of the greatest Roman floor mosaics that has survived, that records the Battle of Issus, where Alexander the Great fought King Darius. And you'll remember Darius, the king of the Persians, and his big audience hall, the Apadana. There he is with his helmet on. And then there's Alexander. We looked at this briefly when we looked at Greek wall painting, because even though this is a Roman mosaic, it's a copy of a Greek painting. So you get a little bit of Greece, you get a little bit of Rome, and it's all kind of mushed together. Quite the range of tones, again, highlights, shadows, sense of action. It's a war scene, so you've got all these great diagonals, spears, and people fighting the debris of war falling on the ground. It's very chaotic, dense. And then yet, here's our portrait of Alexander, and you can see that our artist is able to get a pretty good range. You get a sense of volume with highlights and shadows and that sort of thing. Even a little bit of emotion, and maybe I'm reading into it, but to me, it looks like Darius is a little frightened about what's happening with his wide-eyed facial expressions as Alexander comes in to defeat the Persians and send them back to where they came from. Here's another mosaic on the left, and then a fresco on the right depicting the exact same thing. The mosaic comes from Pompeii, and the fresco comes from Naples, which is nearby. Both cities, you can see Vesuvius from the city, so that's how close they are. We don't know who saw which one first, but we do know that each artist was familiar with one another, because it's a virtual duplication. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So you'll find the same scene, the same way, with the same characters and the same color combination. You might find it in Naples. You might find the same thing later in Rome. You might find it in France later on as well. The Roman Empire, remember, the way that it was able to cohese and stay powerful was to have a uniform style of architecture and art throughout the whole empire, to remind people where they were and who was in control. So it does not surprise us that we see similar motifs, similar styles, ranging the whole length and breadth of the Roman Empire, from Egypt to Spain to Turkey and whatnot. The themes that we see in mosaics kind of run the gamut. This is an allegorical scene showing the personification of Africa, Mother Africa. And so there she is in the center, wrapped in a toga. She's sort of darker skin, bluish skin, and then she's holding a big elephant tusk, which some people have read as kind of a cornucopia or a horn of plenty over the years. And then we have exotic animals. The Romans loved exotic animals. Well, they love killing exotic animals, but they like to depict exotic animals. And so here we see a tiger and an elephant, and then a phoenix over here on the left that doesn't show up too often, but there it is. We might find hunting scenes, battle scenes, all the same things that we saw in Greece, we also see in Rome. And they all have that same level of energy and movement and so forth. Once again, to me, still just fascinating that they're able to get such a range of values and colors, all from these little cubes of glass and ceramic and stone, all hacked into little squares. We also get genre scenes or scenes of everyday life. This is some of the first times that we get little bits of insight into the everyday life of the Romans. Here we have a bunch of young women exercising. They're lifting weights and jogging. I guess jazzercise there in the middle with the shield. Maybe it's some warfare practice. I don't know. They're exercising. Who knows what they did? Probably those elastic bands. Have you seen those? There's a lot of funny videos about people get snapped with those if you look for those. So people working out, people working in the garden, people cooking food, people sewing clothing, all of these things all of a sudden become fodder for these different mosaics. Why? Well, it all kind of relates to where it appears in the house. So this would be appropriate in what would have been the gymnasium area of the house, just like at the gym you used to have those inspirational posters of people working out and going to the gun show and that kind of stuff. This is the same sort of thing. Likewise, you might find images of food in the kitchen or people eating, something like that. Usually relates to the space. There's some more workouts happening there. I don't know what they're doing. Something with the branches. You might warn your neighbor that your dog is not the friendliest of dogs. So in this case, we have the inscription Cave Canem, or beware of dog. And this is at the entrance of the house. So it's the first thing that you see when you go to visit this person. I always kind of like that one. Thought it was cute. He doesn't look that mean, does he? He's black, but you know, black dogs are usually kind of scary. But that one's sort of friendly to me, except for the scary teeth there. That's not good. Other times, I think we see artists sort of flexing their creative muscles, their technical skills, and things like this. This one is pretty famous. It's called the Unswept Floor. And it's just a bunch of material that has supposedly landed in random areas on the floor and turned into a decorative motif. This is one of the best examples of it, but there are other unswept floors in other houses. I always like the little mouse eating the walnut there in the center. But there's a whole bunch of stuff. There's shells, there's rocks, nuts, fruits, some cherries. There's a chicken foot, and they all have shadows as well. It looks like actual objects sitting on the floor, and then the light shines down, and they are aware of how cast shadows work and how they reproduce. All the shadows are going the same direction, so they know about light source and intensity and all of that good stuff. And there's a close-up of the little mouse next to a seashell. I think there's a feather there somewhere, twigs, branches, acorns. And then there he is. Oh, he's so sweet. He's so cute. And then you can see the little shadow, all made out of little squares. Still fascinating to me. I know I keep going on about it, but geez, look at that. Think of the labor involved to make that. Just the sheer amount of time. I'll just let you absorb that for a few seconds. That's just fantastic stuff. Plus, it took me a while to find this detail slide, so now you have to look at it. All right, had enough? Okay, good. Moving on. Another sort of still life object. This one showing this is from Hadrian's Villa. It's another floor mosaic, but this one I found pretty impressive because of the way that he's able to portray texture here, the texture of that big bronze urn, the texture of the water, the dove sort of feeding from the water, the use of perspective and the plinth that the urn sits on. A lot of really great skill sets at work here in portraying texture of the feathers. And then all of that surrounded by this sort of decorative kind of egg and dart border, multicolored egg and dart border that goes all the way around it. It's something you walk over. So you know when you go to a home and they've got this level of decoration and it's on the floor, that this is someone of some means and importance, as Hadrian, of course, was. We find some mythological scenes as well. Here we have the Romanized versions of Poseidon and his daughter Amphitrite. In this case, Poseidon becomes Neptune. I don't know what the Greek version of Amphitrite was, but there she is. All of it with this very elaborate, decorative border. We even have a reappearance of the vine scrolls that we saw in the Arapaces here. Here they are reappearing as grotesqueries or ornamental, vegetal, decorative motifs around the border. And then we also have simulated architecture here in these flattened columns called pilasters. And then we have this little niche. The whole thing forms an architectural niche, and then the top part is scalloped like a seashell, which relates back to Neptune and Amphitrite, gods and goddesses of the sea. And there they are a little closer. And again, a pretty great variety of tones and shadows and highlights and colors as well that we're able to get out of all of these. Now, you don't get as much detail with mosaics, but you do get longevity. These are still bright and vibrant 2,000 years later. We don't get the same level of durability with wall frescoes unless they're at Pompeii, protected by 20 feet of volcanic ash. So each method has its pros and cons. Here's another mythological scene. This is Achilles being adored by the princesses of Skyros. And this is where he had to dress up as a woman and hide among the princesses so that he wouldn't be captured and arrested. And so you get a little tidbit of not only architecture, but clothing styles and armaments and armor and that sort of thing. All of that kind of included in the same scene. It's almost a genre scene, but it's mythological and gives us a wide variety of things. And then here's one more showing Dionysius, who becomes Bacchus, the god of wine in the Roman pantheon of gods. So it's just yet another example. And he's in a landscape. It's not a very deep landscape. We're kind of limited in how far back in the distance we can go with mosaics, but we will go further when we get to painting. This is probably one of my favorite ones. From Pompeii. It's just showing the bounty of the sea. Pompeii's right there on the coast, so it makes sense, just like with our Aegean friends and some of our coastal Greeks, that we see images of fish. The sea is the source of life. And so we have this wonderful octopus in the center who's eating a lobster as sort of the focal point, and then he's surrounded by all of these other sea creatures, fish and eels and squid and you name it. It's just a nice wide variety, and they're all very active and moving, and it's in mosaic. Again, just the level of detail and craftsmanship that they're able to achieve with mosaic is just fascinating to me. A little closer view with a curious eel going up to check out the octopus to see if he's going to leave any of that lobster for him. Probably not. This is another fun one. It's called a memento mori, or a reminder of death, which is a still life subject that will continue on into the 1700s, particularly in the Netherlands and Holland. It becomes very popular still life motif. The reminder of death is just, it's it's just a reminder for you to sort of keep your shit together. Don't get too caught up in consuming earthly things or having too much fun, because death is going to come for all of us, as indicated by the wheel of fortune here. Whether you're a prince or whether you're a pauper, whether you're a king or whether you're a peasant, death is going to come for you. So make sure that your life counts for something. Make sure everything is balanced, as suggested by these scales, ancient scales at the top. Everything needs to level out. Later on, these reminders of death, these vanitas paintings, will not just include death itself, but also some examples of earthly pleasures like foods and music and books and that sort of thing, which are all temporary. You can only enjoy them for a short period of time. And then here is a theater scene. The Romans, just like the Greeks, loved their theater, so it makes sense that they would record little scenes from their favorite plays in mosaics and painting as well. This one showing a little interior with some architecture, probably a tomb, and then we have, and I think it's a tomb because of these garlands here, which are funeral motifs, and then this shelf of urns. Remember all of our Greek funerary urns that we had? That leads me to believe that this is a tomb scene. But they're actors, and you can see some of the masks that they have in this little mask bucket in the foreground, and they will put them on and play different characters, tell different stories. And then this one is from Pompeii. It's one of those naughty frescoes. They have mosaics of the naughtiness as well in Pompeii. But the brothels, the whorehouses in Pompeii, were for everyone. You didn't have to be a senator or an emperor to use them. If you had the money, honey, you could come in and have a good time. Which means that not everyone could read. So when they have the menu of all the things you can do in the brothel, if you couldn't read it, then you might rely on illustrations to show you what's available to you in each of the rooms, and some of them get quite filthy. This one is a fragment, but you get the gist of it, and they're very popular. If you didn't know where they were, they left little signs on the cobblestones to let you know where the brothels were. Just follow the yellow brick penis, and that will take you straight to the brothel where you can meet the wizard or whatever you're into. Here's a mosaic. It's a little milder. They aren't all just tacky porn scenes. Some of them have a little bit more class to them, as this one does. This is a satyr and a nymph that's a little bit gentler on the eye. And then here is a painted scene that's got a little bit more romance to it, and is less tacky than some of those brothel scenes. Again, another exotic animal. This one is a lion attacking a leopard. Pretty graphic, but seemingly appropriate for the Romans for some reason. You think of the Romans, you think of a kind of a bloodthirsty people, and so that doesn't surprise us. Whether it's in a hunting lodge or a private home, it would be appropriate as decoration. Portraits as well. Just like some of our Roman friends wanted to be commemorated in portrait sculpture, some of them are commemorated in mosaic portraits, as we see here. The mosaics give us the addition of color and give us kind of a sense of what some Roman wall painting would have looked like. I have actual examples I'll show you that will compare. So again, you're still kind of limited in how much detail that you can imbue a mosaic, but still just amazing that they were able to accomplish what they accomplished. Speaking of portraiture, here's the mosaic version, Now let's look at some painted Roman portraiture and see what we see. This is a woman who is literate. Again, remember the women in Roman society had a much higher status than they did in Greece or Etruria. So they're able to become literate and learn to read and own property and produce writings and so forth. This particular woman wanted to be remembered as being literate, and so she's holding her wax tablets and her stylus, which she has resting on her lip, like she's thinking about what she wants to write. Very thoughtful, literate person. The process for writing something, you didn't just sit down and write like we do today, which we don't even do that anymore. But you would have a wax tablet where you could write down whatever it is you wanted to write down, record what someone said, and then you could melt it with your finger and make corrections and so forth. And then later that would be copied onto papyrus for a scroll in order to record it in a more practical way, practical storage, weight, that sort of thing. So she wants to be remembered as being a literate person who writes. Here's some of those writing tablets that have survived, complete with a little hint of some shorthand there on the left where someone has recorded something in writing. We always want to be recorded at our best. Here is an interesting little tondo painting. Tondo is in the shape of a circle, and it shows Emperor Septimus Severus with his wife and his two sons, Caracalla and Geta. Geta is gone. You can see Geta's head has been removed because when Caracalla became emperor, he issued the Edict of Damnatio Memoriae against his brother and had him obliterated from history as if he never existed, just to mess with his soul on a cosmic level. Now this would be from a private home. The Romans liked to pay tribute to their emperors, and at this point emperors are still sort of like divinities. So it's like having a little private altar in your home dedicated to Emperor Septimus Severus or Julius Caesar or what have you. And maybe they would make little offerings to it or burn candles or something like that. The equivalent would be having a portrait of President Trump hanging in your home, and you might make little offerings of orange M&Ms to him or something like that to pay tribute. Something like that. So the Romans did love their emperors for the most part, or they pretended to, so that the man wouldn't come around and harass them. Here's another couple that has had themselves immortalized in wall painting. It's a husband and wife, and they are both literate. The woman holds the stylus and the wax tablets, and then the husband is holding the scroll that will be the end result. So they're both literate, or they want you to think that. That's how they want to be remembered. Everybody wants to be remembered at their best. I always thought this guy looked a little bit like a doofus to me. He doesn't look as intelligent as his wife, but maybe I'm just being a little harsh in my judgment. Regardless, they want to be remembered at their best, as we all do. That's why we put on nice clothes when we take our wedding portraits, and that's why in Victorian times when someone died, they gussy him up and take a final post-mortem photo to be remembered for all time. But they didn't have photos back in ancient Rome. So what did they do to commemorate people when they died? They did mummy portraits, especially in Fayum, which is, I always lose it on the map. It is, I've lost it. I think it's up here somewhere. It was Egyptian. It was under Roman control. So there's a lot of Egyptian Motifs, of course, you're in Egypt, but since it's under Roman control, there's also Roman elements that sort of hybridize and merge together and create a whole new style that's unique to the Fayum area. We see it most clearly on their mummy portraits. So just like when old King Tut died and had that nice golden casket and the golden death mask so that his soul could identify his Ka and his body in the afterlife, we do the same thing nowadays. Even though Rome is in control, there's still Egyptian traditions, so you see a merging of Egyptian and Roman motifs. We mummify the deceased, and then we paint their portrait on the outside of it's not really a casket, it's more like a cocoon, like a wooden cocoon that sort of envelops the mummy inside. And then sometimes you'll paint their portraits on the lid. Sometimes it's a little additional piece of wood that's put inside of a box. There's a whole host of ways to commemorate what the deceased looked like when they were alive. And they're pretty sensitive. They're done in caustic, which is pigment that is suspended in melted beeswax, which gives it this longevity. It lasts and lasts and lasts. The drawback of painting with encaustic is that it hardens very quickly, so you have to paint really, really fast. And you can see all these little brush strokes where it's almost like an impressionist painting. The whole thing is made of lots of little strokes that the eye sort of blends together into what is a surprisingly sensitive portrait of an ancient dead Egyptian. And they want to be commemorated for different things depending on their status and vocation and so forth. But this is way, way more common ones from ages ago. But they do the job. They record what the person looked like, but they're not nearly as elaborate. There's just tons of these. I've seen them in several European museums, and they all have varying degrees of skill and quality. Just like artwork today, not everyone's a Picasso or a Da Vinci, and so you kind of run the gamut on believability and style, which is interesting because sometimes you can sense the hand of an unrecorded artist. They have the same style, and they're all from about the same time, so we can deduce that it's probably the same person producing all of these things. So we have the little the masks, and then we have the wooden planks that are on the coffin lids, and then sometimes we even put portraits on the headstones. So after the person's buried in the ground, and those don't last quite as long because they're exposed to the elements, or even wooden panels that are left in the tomb. Those also survive to varying degrees of intactness. There's another one, and you can see that melted wax, the encaustic technique. They're very sensitively done, very expressive, and impressively done, in that we're not only getting a sense of what the person looked like, but we get a little piece of their personality too. Most of the blue-collar laborers didn't bother with these, so most of the deceased that we're looking at were the higher strata of society, your noblemen, your generals in the military, and that sort of thing. Still a good sense of volume if we're looking at it in formal terms, highlights, shadows, depth, that sort of thing, all of it kind of coming through here. We know this is a lady of some means because she is commemorated wearing her best jewelry, her earrings and her necklace there. Same is the case here. Wear your finest because that's how you're going to be remembered for all of eternity. These two are probably by the same artist. The style is very, very similar, especially around the emphasis on the eyes, as you can see. And then this is fairly typical. This one always kind of blows my mind because there's Egyptian stuff. There's Anubis at the bottom, and those Egyptian gods and goddesses from the Book of the Dead. And then you go up and the guy's wearing a toga and he's got Roman laurel leaves around his head. So Rome meets Egypt and they just mushed together. Still really kind of fun, and you can see what the end context was for some of these mummy portraits, how they sit on the lid of a wooden casket. And then there's sort of a timeline. You can see all the different types of mummy portraits that have come down to us. You just take your pick which way you want to be remembered. And then there are a few more. This one shows a woman who was buried with her 2 daughters. This one I show you because they didn't always bury these people immediately. Some of the mummy cases that you see, they're kind of beat up. And that's because it was not uncommon once someone was mummified, especially if it was a parent who had lost their children, you'd want to keep them around. So you'd put them outside in a courtyard, or put them in the den, or in the spare room, or in the workshop, or something. I don't know where they put them, but they'd keep them around so that you wouldn't have to go all the way to the cemetery to visit your child or your husband or what have you. I mean, you keep pictures of your grandparents around after they died. The people of Fayum kept the grandparents around so that you could still go hang out with. There's still cultures. There's a Indonesian culture that goes and digs up the relatives every 10 years, and they have big parties, and they eat with them and drink with them, and they bury them again. And it's weird stuff, man. Weird. Death does weird stuff to people. There's another one. I always thought this one was kind of cute. A little mischievous boy. And then we have a little inscription here on his chest that identifies his name and so forth. Really nice attention to detail with the reflections and highlights and shadows and so forth. Very sensitively done. This lady wanted to be remembered for being rich and important, so she's wearing her fancy gold diadem on her head and her lovely pearl earrings. This guy wants to be remembered for being a soldier, so he's commemorated wearing his armor. And this guy wants to be remembered for being a priest, and he's very serious, no-nonsense guy. He's wearing his priestly headband and his priestly robes. So these are vocational portraits, people wanting to be remembered for what they did, what their career was. And we still do that today. Here's a farmer, and if you ever spend any time walking around a cemetery, you'll find all sorts of things on headstones. Sometimes portraits, sometimes images of their farm or whatever if they were in the military, or if they were a doctor, or if they were another sort of vocation. All that gets put on the tombstone because that's how people want to be remembered. Even Michael Jackson. There's the King of Pop's tombstone. And then here's Beethoven's, along with a little joke that I'll give you a minute to absorb and see if you get. If you stand in front of it, you can hear the sound of music playing backwards. That's the sound of the maestro decomposing. It's backwards, rotting. Julie got it, so thanks. Appreciate that. It's good stuff. Good stuff. Beaker, did you catch it? Okay, good. Okay, it's a tough room today. Tough room. I'm trying my best here. Trying my best. All right. Now let's look at Roman wall painting styles. Why paint the walls? Because we want to impress you. We want you to know how rich and important we are, of course, and so we paint the walls. And there are 4 different styles and then variants of all of these styles, but you only have to remember the 4 main styles. The first one's pretty easy. The first style of Roman wall painting, also called the incrustation style, is simply simulated texture. It's either fake marble, fake wood grain, sometimes it's just pattern, sometimes it's just flat color, but it's something to make the walls look like something other than concrete, other than stone, something to enliven the space. Usually, the first style is included along with one of the other three styles, but occasionally we find whole rooms just done in the first style. I know it doesn't look like much, but you can see some of these little rectangles are different colors. This one's greenish, reddish, whitish, yellowish, all of that just to decorate the wall. Sometimes there's patterns, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes there's a slight sense of depth, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes it's pretty plain and simple, and sometimes it's pretty elaborate. This is a little fragment of first style wall painting that I thought looked like stained glass. There's another view. And then here's a room done in the first style where we have a lot of those sort of M.C. Escher-esque 3D patterns painted onto the wall so that it looks like something more than what it is. Here's a whole room. We've got flat colors, we've got simulated marble, simulated architectural carving, all of that on a flat wall to make it look like something better than what it actually is. And then there's some more pretty advanced stuff here. These repeating geometric patterns, and then right next to it you can see the simulated marble patterns, and then above it more of those flat motifs. We're just decorating the wall, friends. That's all we're doing here. Sometimes we'll throw in an extra something. We've got a garland, and then we have this little basket with a snake coming out, which I had to look up. It's called the Cista Mystica, which is a little basket that would hold sacred snakes dedicated to rites of Bacchus, rites of Dionysius, and I'm not sure what they did with them. Probably nothing good, but that's that. There's one more. There's a close view. Got enough? Seen enough of this yet? Well, I've got some more, so just a couple. We still do this today. We still put faux textures on the wall to make something look more expensive than it really is. So the Romans did it, and then the Romans disappeared. And then about 1,000 years later, our friend Giotto di Bondone from the Renaissance went to Rome and found these and thought, those are pretty cool, and started incorporating them into his early Renaissance paintings. And it was just the start of a whole trend of looking back to the classical past and sort of giving birth to it again, a rebirth, a renaissance, as it was called in the Renaissance period. There's a closer view so you can see the simulated marble texture. All right, that's the first style. Got it? Good. Now let's look at the second style. Instead of just enlivening the space, we want to provide some kind of illusion with the second style. Say it with me. Illusion. You have to wave your arms too, just to wake up. Illusion. Ivy, come on. Where are the arms? Okay, all right. I got a little something there. Illusion. We want it to look like it's bigger than it is. We still sometimes see the first style thrown in with it. This is kind of a merger between the first style and second style. And it does go back with this little recessed space of architecture. We've used that to give us a sense of receding back so that it doesn't look like a flat wall. You'll remember this little cubiculum, this little bedroom. All of the wall is covered with second style wall painting so that the room looks way bigger than it actually is. There's an alternate view. These wall paintings would act as sort of a guide and a designation for parts of the house. The important guests would be prone to follow the best painted parts of the house. That's where you were supposed to go. The servants and the slaves stayed in the dark shadows of the house and didn't fraternize with the guests. So you knew where was off limits and where it was okay to go. Yes, sir?
So did you, by any chance, get to walk into one of these rooms?
No, I've only seen little fragments. I didn't get to go to Pompeii.
I was gonna ask.
It's a big life regret of mine not having gone to Pompeii.
If you thought that it actually made the room feel bigger or not, but.
No, because
I feel like it would feel claustrophobic.
it would be because it's not illusionistic. I'm looking at this through 21st century eyes, so
Yeah, that's true.
the things that convince me of depth are going to be way different than what convinced the Romans. I mean, the Romans still believed in cyclopses and centaurs and stuff, so they're pretty easily fooled. Vampires and werewolves and that kind of thing. So yeah, it didn't take that much to make them believe things. So, yeah, I've had a lot of friends go to Pompeii. Oh, I know how much you love Pompeii. Here's some pictures. Thank you. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. There's another one. Sometimes, again, varying degrees of skill depending on the technical abilities of the artist. Sometimes the architecture is pretty fanciful and elaborate, and sometimes it's pretty simple. This is a pretty well done one, and you can see the incorporation of scientific perspective there in the background to give us a sense of actual depth. It looks like we're looking through a window into a colonnaded courtyard. And then sometimes it gets away from them a little bit. Here the perspective is a little janky in spots, so it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, but it does look like depth, and it does open up the wall space and make it look deeper than it is. There's another one with the painted walls and a mosaic floor, just to give you a sense of just how really elaborate all of these private homes were for the most part. There's another example. Sometimes gold, sometimes the things you see that are gold, but in this case, that's all faked in. They have the reflections on the top and the shadows on the bottom, and they know how to arrange it so that it reads as gold, even though it's not. Here's a second style painting, and you can see remnants of the first style along the top and the bottom. This is a Dionysian mystery cult that encouraged flagellation, beating the initiates with whips so that they could join the cult of Dionysius. Here's another view. The depth is there. It's very shallow. You can see the floor painted there, and it's like a little stage. It's like they're all performing little tableaus sitting on this stage. There's some more of the whipping in trouble. Some mythological scenes painted as well. This is the birth of Venus Marina, and you can see she's coming out of a little scallop shell on the crest of a wave, flanked by two little winged putti figures. So this and that billowing cape over her head to kind of give it a sense of depth and space. This sort of thing was the inspiration for Sandro Botticelli's Venus from 1484. Same type of thing. One of the Lorenzo de' Medici was friends with Botticelli and probably took him to Rome and showed him some of these things and explained what they were for. The legend of the Lastrygonians, who were a bunch of man-eating giants that attacked the fleet of Odysseus. Here, it's a mythological scene, but it's a landscape as well, complete with atmospheric perspective in the sky. They realize that the sky gets lighter the closer you get to the horizon line. So little things like that add a sense of depth. This is a 1902 copy of that in case you needed some extra definition in what exactly you're looking at. Not nearly as well done as the first one. And then sometimes you get little gardens, little faux gardens. This is a grove of orange trees in a little fake garden with a sort of undulating wall that goes around. It's all flat wall space, but this one I think is one of the ones that has the best sense of depth with all the little orange trees and palm trees and that sort of thing. And then there's a closer view. You have birds flitting in and out of the limbs as well. Lots of flowers and so forth. That's a very, very nice job. Some other gardening details from some other wall paintings that I thought were pretty nice. A couple of doves over a little stone bird bath. And then there are lots of little still lifes that have a good sense of depth. Typically food things like this you'd find around kitchen areas. There's sort of a tradition in Roman painting about how to treat guests in your home. So these are supposed to be all offerings that you would give to guests in your home. So that's another reason it's food and wine and eggs and that sort of thing. But then it's also kind of a passive-aggressive bragging about how much money you have. It's what they'll call later on a scene of plenty. The economy's going great and we have so much money. Look at all this damn food. We've got plates and plates and plates of it. And so, especially later on in Holland in the 18th century, they do a whole bunch of those. Here are a bunch of apples and peaches in a big glass bowl, along with an amphora containing wine or honey or who knows what, and then another big jug of berries, or maybe you're a fan of seafood. We got cuttlefish, and we've got lobster, and we've got crabs and so forth, if that's what you need. Or maybe you're vegetarian, and so I've got your figs and your dates and your prunes and a nice glass cup with some wine in it. There's something for everyone with the still lives. And this one's pretty neat because not only do you get these little foodstuffs, but you get this lovely silver little tray, and then this little glass chalice here. The Romans quite adept at working in glass. We don't talk about it very much. Here's some unripe peaches, along with a little glass pitcher of water that's half full, which I thought was nice. They have trouble with their ellipses here, as most of us do, but still an admirable attempt at painting glass, especially glass with water in it. And so I've decided to pick out a few Roman glass pieces that have survived down to still pretty amazing, and a lot of the techniques they used we still use today. Different colors they could add depending on what mineral they add to the slag and so forth. All right, now we'll look at the third style of Roman wall painting. The idea behind the third style is interchangeable panels. Some people didn't want to be stuck with a garden or a still life of eggs and cuttlefish forever, so they would paint large elaborate frames with smaller panels in the center that they could change out and put new things in, something like this. So you've got this lovely large frame, and then here's the interchangeable thing. You get sick of this, change it out, take it down and put up a new one. A lot cheaper than having your whole wall repainted. It's a very intricate style. There's lots of little flourishes and motifs and banners and all this little bits of gingerbread that go around and make this very intricate frame. Usually a large single color, and then the panel in the center. There's a closer view of one of those panels that can be removed and replaced with other scenes later on if you want. In my mind, whenever the Romans incorporate the third style, it kind of takes it up a notch as far as having that sense of elegance. It's sort of a fancier style, a little bit more elegant, a little bit more graceful, a little more aristocratic. So this is what you tend to find in your finer Roman homes. And they vary, they run the gamut. They sometimes will include little windows that look out into little scenes, sometimes little objects, sometimes fake plants, sometimes fake drapery, all of that included. And then here's another little closer view of a detail of a third style of wall painting. Here it is with multiple panels that can be interchanged and replaced if you like. All sort of descendants of what we've seen before up to this point. There's another one. There's one with yellow walls with little tiny paintings in the center that can be done over. And another. I like this one because it's got some of those still lives across the top. We've combined the second style and the third style together onto one wall. And then there's one more with your tiny little panels at the top there that you can change out. And then the last style that we're going to see is the fourth style. And that's where you combine all of those together. It's also called the intricate style or the combined style. But the fourth style of Roman wall painting uses a little bit of everything. All of these houses, you'll find multiple styles, and houses didn't just have the first style or the third style. It was always a combination throughout the whole house. So here you've got the third style with all of these big panels, and then you've got the second style and these little panels, and then you've got all this painted faux architecture with these intricate little details and bits of grotesquerie and flourish all around the outside for decoration. Here's another one from that same house we saw earlier from the Dionysian mystery cult, where we have combined the first style into, and then we've got the second style and third style incorporated as well. And then here's another one. I always liked this one from Herculaneum because we've incorporated atmospheric perspective into this architectural depth. It's not land, it's layers of fantastic architecture that go further and further back, and the further back they go, the lighter they are. And then we have scientific perspective used in this fantastic little architectural niche in the foreground. Along the top, there's faux drapery, and all of that comes together to communicate a sense of depth. So it's got, again, a little bit of every. They're both. They're all in different buildings, but the time period we're looking at, it's only about 200 years, and then that's it. The Vesuvius came and locked it all away. All the other examples from elsewhere are exposed to the elements and haven't survived. So you're looking at about 200 years worth, roughly, all preserved in the same general geographic area. There's the white version, and then these little interchangeable panels that are sort of incorporating the third style here. These scenes can be mythological scenes or portraits or what have you, depending on who the owner is. In this case, we have a record of the legend of Heracles and Telephos from the fourth style. This is one of those smaller interchangeable paintings, and it shows a pretty good deal of highlights, depth. The painted drapery here I also thought was very impressive. The Romans knew how to paint. They understood nature. They understood depth and volume, and it is evident in their paintings. There's another one. This is where Hera upon finding out that Zeus had cheated on her with a mortal, and the mortal gave birth to baby Hercules, she sends a couple of snakes to his nursery to strangle him to death as a baby. But because he's Hercules, he, as a little baby, in this case a homunculus, or a little miniature adult, he's strangling the snakes, baby Hercules is. But what I like about this is you've got a room, an interior, and then here's an opening to a second space outside that shows the front of a temple in the background. So a really good sense of depth and atmospheric perspective, highlights, shadows, the whole enchilada. Here's a Roman fresco showing a banquet scene. We talked a little about the indulgent lifestyle of some of the emperors and their feasts and banquets, and how they would recline and eat for days and days and days. There's what it looked like. I found this one, which I thought was fun. It was a fourth style painting that showed an exterior garden with an exterior sculpted marble statue, which most of the paint has faded off of because it's outside. But it also had these cool little birds here in the foreground, which look very believable. I don't know, it just messed with my head a little bit to see a painting of a sculpture. And then there's one showing another ancient scene. And another. You can see they vary from place to place. Color scheme varies, theme varies. This is the head of Medusa. So she'll be a guardian figure to protect your house from evil spirits and that sort of thing. That's how they all would have sat together in the same space. Some of the paintings look like windows out into other scenes, and then some of them record mythological scenes. There's baby Hercules strangling the snakes. And there's one more. This one's kind of nice because you have a whole row of painted windows around the top that sort of look out into other space. And then around the bottom, there's our first style of wall painting, and then there's the third style in the center. So all three combined together to create that fourth style of painting. That's an alternate view. And then there's one more. So the next phase of art that we're going to go into is Christian art, and all of this is going to disappear. All of these phases are going to disappear. All of the progress towards naturalism and believability, all of that is going to disappear as well in favor of picture books to illustrate how to receive salvation. So, that's it.